Hey there, welcome to episode 108 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 5:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in Las Vegas, Nevada, United States, Earth, on this Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. We normally publish on Wednesdays, so we're getting, I think we'll make it. Usually earlier in the day, but that's the way it is. Today's title and topic is restaurants. That could go in any number of directions. If you are not familiar with the Quaggling Sand audio program, it is essentially audio essays, pretty much solo at this point. I think it's fair to say we're 108 episodes in, and we are starting once again with just me, which is fine. Stories, tales, recollections, something that might be interesting, something that might be educational, useful in some way, who knows? Just me talking into a microphone about things gone by. The term quaggling sand, by the way, is a technical term I myself coined when I was very young. You probably know this better as pins and needles, that sensation that you get when circulation returns to an otherwise numb, say, hand or foot that you may have been sleeping or sitting on. Quaggling sand. This whole time, that's what it's been, quaggling sand. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a summary, a 2-sentence summary that I will read to you, and then some links. There are two program links. They're sort of the shameless self-promotion stuff, and then one episode link, Wikipedia, of course. So let's get on with it so we can hopefully get started on FFS talk for tomorrow before it's already Friday. Quaggling Sand, episode 108. Here we go. The summary of today's episode: restaurants are fine. I was once a nearly exclusive patron of any number of them. Little typo there. I reworked that sentence, so let's start over. Restaurants are fine. I was once a nearly exclusive patron of any number of them, barely cooking at home. Over the years, especially recently, that flipped almost entirely, and I think it's unfortunately obvious why. To me, anyway. We'll see. The links for today's episode: Quaggling Sand has a homepage at quagglingsand.com. One of these days, I will make it look nicer. I've actually been looking at different podcaster websites and just some ideas about how I wanted to present this. One of the things I want to do is to make this the primary point of publication, which means all of the episodes should be available on my own hosted websites, and then Spotify and all the other places you can find it would be the secondary places. That's sort of how podcasting was supposed to work anyway. Multiple places to find episodes. Wherever you find your podcast, as you will often hear. So you can always find it at the primary point of publication, but to make it easier for those who use Spotify or Apple, is it still called iTunes? I don't know. Apple Podcasting, Amazon Podcasting. If you listen on YouTube used to be Google Podcasts, but they moved it to YouTube Music, and now it's just YouTube Podcasts. Maybe there will be some video someday. Who knows? But yeah, so it's all part of a big thing. Yeah, at some point I want to do an episode on why do people bother designing websites. There's this weird dichotomy. On the one hand, the websites are dead. Don't even bother. Just use Facebook or Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever. That's all people get all their news from Twitter. Why bother having a news website? Well, on the other hand, there's tremendous amounts of money being spent on AI models that can build websites for you. So who knows? Who knows what's going on there? Anyway, Quaggling Sand, QUOGGLINGSAND, no space, quagglingsand.com. Profile page linking everything is my buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo page, which has been around for 5 years or so. One of these days I'll check the creation date, but if it even has it. It's not a perfect platform. You don't have to spend any money there, but it does provide a recognizable freeform profile page. So everybody has kind of heard of buymeacoffee.com. Of course, if you go to that/DanHugo, you will find a page of links and information, my biographical information at the top, links to the various places you can find all of my audio programs, whether on YouTube or elsewhere. YouTube is not great, by the way, for this, but it's pretty well known. I think it's like the number one Is it number one social media? So, in some metric, I don't know. YouTube. So we're on YouTube, and you will find some affiliate links for products that I actually use, including some of my favorite coffees. So if you'd like to support all these efforts across the board and you want to get some nice coffee beans or a couple of other things that I actually use, you can click on those. It costs you nothing extra. And that's all I have to say about that. Finally, Kitchen Confidential. It's a Wikipedia page that describes the book by Anthony Bourdain, the late Anthony Bourdain. It's a book I've actually, I've read parts of it as the printed word, but the entire book I have listened to multiple times as read by the author at 1.2 speed, 1.2x, 1.25x, somewhere in there. Fun fact, if you listen to Anthony Bourdain reading his book at normal 1.1x, 1.0x, it sounds a little bit more depressing to me. But if you bump it up just a little bit, 1.2, then it sounds like he has a little bit more energy and that he's actually talking about something that I'm not going to say he's happy about, but he's certainly energized by it. That was a little motorcycle production by a street. So yes, I've consumed the audiobook several times. I think it's interesting. It has a lot of subtleties. I think it's better than his second book, and I never read any of his fiction. Medium rare? Media rare? Medium rare. Is that what it is? No, what is his second book? I should find out just because I've referred to it. Medium raw, sorry. Medium raw. There's somebody else I knew a long time ago had a company called Media Rare. It was you can guess, an internet media company. Media Rare, Medium Raw. So his book, Medium Raw, it was okay. I think Kitchen Confidential was a little bit more grounded, and it is absolutely not a reference manual. It's not a work of complete nonfiction. So I think some people, in fact, he addresses that in his second book, and that things have changed since he wrote the book and so on, especially about fish markets, for example. But on the other hand, at the times when I've been in the food industry, I've seen some of the things he described in some ways. So I think it's a good book to read in general, but it definitely made me think about some things, and that will become apparent here. And by the way, I have talked about food trucks before. I don't really talk about food trucks here. I think food trucks are kind of a different thing. They have even more margin troubles. It's even more difficult to operate a food truck because you actually have to move. So you don't have the people returning. My favorite place, it was right here yesterday. And you have all the challenges of a vehicle. You have none of the pantry space. You can't carry ingredients to satisfy special menu needs, right? We don't have a vegetarian menu. We don't have enough space for a double kitchen to avoid cross-contamination for gluten-free or other food allergens, right? So I've kind of left food trucks out here. I'm really talking more about brick and mortar restaurants. So there you go. Kitchen Confidential, though, if you're in the food industry or even adjacent to it, or if you go to restaurants, with the caveat that it is not to be taken entirely literally, but is definitely food for thought. Sorry. It's a good book. I think it stands up with all the caveats. So restaurants in the old days, I'm talking about when I was young. So I don't know how that works. When I was growing up in New Jersey, briefly, for better or worse, we moved to Arizona when I was 6. I remember going to Burger King now and then for yumbos and other delights. I think I was a fan of onion rings back then, as early as back then. And there was a Dairy Queen, and they had dilly bars on warm summer nights. I remember that. And there were also fireflies or lightning bugs. Where did they all go? But that's a different thing. Summers in New Jersey were a little humid, a little warm. For the most part, as I recall, we ate at home a lot. Sure, Big Jim's Pizza now and then, Pizza Town USA for their fried calzones, a few other spots like Wolfie's. Now and then, of course, there were, in the city, if we were in the city somewhere, there were bagels and Italian ice to be had, among other things, pretzels and so on, all the stuff from food carts mostly, but occasionally going into a place. We'll talk more about food carts on another occasion. But yeah, eating at home or at the grandparents' homes was the most common thing that I remember. And that seemed fine. ShopRite and A&P were more common when it came to foodie destinations. Those were grocery stores. I think ShopRite's still around. I don't remember. They probably both are at some point. Somewhere in the eastern part of the U.S. Then there was the move. We moved to Arizona when I was just about 6 years old, as I said. So a whole new culture, a whole new school, which itself was so new it didn't even have a name yet. It was called Unit 10 until later renamed to Horizon Elementary. And its shiny new cafeteria turning out school lunches, and 2 working parents made for a range of meal options. I mostly brought a lunch to school in a brown bag after the Yankee Doodle lunchbox incident until junior high school. And over time, we transitioned at home from normal cooking of normal meals to more frozen meals, and an uptick in Burger King and McDonald's and some other fast food now and then. The Yumbo had faded, but both of these, Burger King and McDonald's, not to mention at Wendy's in their baked potato era, at Taco Bell, and more, all within walking distance from home. And in New Jersey, we didn't have those at the time. We didn't have them walking distance. The only thing walking distance for me at that point was Berkeley Elementary School. Eventually, the high school lunch, and I said until junior high, but I meant including junior high. So eventually the high school lunch, usually a square slice of bad pizza on a boat of French fries, was my sacrifice of choice. It would give way to to any number of fast food spots around the open campus. And indeed, I would work at McDonald's inside Metro Center Mall for a time. I've talked about that a lot. And I had my share of that menu during that time. And if I think about it, I kind of wonder why we had our open campus at Sunny Slope High School, and I had friends with cars. So there was a KFC and there was some other fast food restaurants that we could walk to. But we could have very easily gone a little bit farther and had more interesting, maybe sit-down snacks. So, yeah, I don't know what we were thinking back then. Convenience. College and beyond. I was on the 10 meal plan. We had to have a meal plan if we lived on campus, or I probably would not have been on a meal plan, but I was on the 10 meal plan. They had a 19 meal plan, which was 2 meals on the weekends, four meals on the 2 weekend days, and then 3 squares during the week. So I went with 10. At Harvey Mudd College, the cafeteria was actually fine. There was nothing really overtly wrong with it, but I just didn't want to have that much food, so why pay for it? There were a variety of dining halls around the 5 college campuses, which we would eventually, after my first semester, I think we started branching out to visit other campuses and just kind of get the feel of what was going on across the 5 colleges. And there were a few off-campus options that were worth checking out. I did a whole episode recently about Thai food from Sanam Nawang Cafe and how that became the only real meal option for my final year there at Harvey Mudd, and even after. But for the 3 other years, slowly but surely kind of migrated to having other types of food from other places off campus. And for better or worse, fast food was illegal. Fast food, McDonald's and so on. So there were restaurants that were right on the border. And as it happens, the east edge of our campus was essentially on the border between Claremont and, I think, was it Montclair up there? Or it might have been, were we directly in Upland? I think it was either Montclair or Upland. So there was an In-N-Out and an Easy Takeout Burger right on the border, and there were a few other places. We eventually would find places like, what was it called? There was a barbecue place, Joey's Barbecue, and the Buffalo Inn, the Hat, which was a fast food but slightly slower than McDonald's. Yeah, so anyway, there were a number of places to go, and there was almost no need to prepare food in our dorm room, which was difficult anyway. This is where things get a little bit silly after college. On moving to Silicon Valley to commence my engineering career, the notion of cooking at home seemed to have gone completely out of mind. And again, we couldn't cook in our dorm rooms, really. There were a few efficiency dorm arrangements that some people had, and there were some apartments that some people lived in. So some people had partial or full kitchen access. But in the dorm rooms, in the straight dorm rooms, nothing. The presumption was dining hall or restaurant. Even in the first year of living in Silicon Valley, living 1 parking lot away from a Lucky's otherwise known as Albertsons. That whole time was much more about sundries, that access. The whole time it was more about sundries at the grocery store than actual food ingredients. My roommate did point out that his greatest fear was running out of toilet paper. That was weird. He was also from Harvey Mudd College. We graduated together, so I thought he would have been a little bit smarter. But apparently not good at keeping up with the toilet paper. But that is a different story for a different time. I would have to say that through most of my Silicon Valley experience, hanging out at restaurants, whether lunch with coworkers, usually at work or near work, or running into various colleagues and meeting new people was the way to get the next job, for example. Staying at home seemed less a good idea than it probably actually was. That is, there was really no need to go out and eat in restaurants as often as most people did. I mean, the Bay Area, the South Bay included, has a pretty diverse food culture in general. So there was plenty of opportunity to try out new, there's a Nepalese restaurant near Apple. We would go there a couple times a month, etc. Right? So all kinds of stuff to try out and all kinds of possibilities. So staying at home, you were not meeting people, and that's how you would get a new job when the company you were working at would fold or lay off people or whatever. Who knew? It was a crazy time. I would have to say that through most of my Silicon hanging out at restaurants with coworkers, yeah, that was a time now and then. The local grocery, there was some eating at home now and then. The local grocery stores were not foreign to me for this, but the ratio leaned substantially towards restaurants of various ethnicities over cooking up victuals at home. So whenever I go off I write all this stuff out, especially if I want to make a particular point, but if I go off and start talking about whatever, I lose my place immediately. But I do it anyway. So eventually, we've talked about the house fire thing in April of 2013. I would move to Vegas, and then the world. I moved to Vegas 12 years ago now. It's actually closer to 12 and a half. No, 12. Yeah, it's almost 12 and a half. It's 12 and 5 months or something. A story I've told before, of course. And I would most definitely head out to downtown in the days of the Downtown Project, for example, and other parts of the greater Vegas area now and then to check out the substantial variety of restaurant offerings, which Vegas still does have. They're a little bit more expensive now, so I really don't patronize them, which is the point of this episode. Basically, the Downtown Project revolved around hanging out. And in fact, the serendipitous collisions notion, it was part of the plan. And those things, those serendipitous collisions do not happen when you're eating at home. So there was absolutely, I'm not going to say there was pressure, but there was this notion like, oh, you got to be out and about. You got to be running into people. That was the whole model of the Downtown Project was based on small crowds running into each other. When I accepted, it'd be nice if, who typed this? I don't even know. When I accepted my offer to work with Intel Corporation, part of the deal was a lot of travel. In fact, it was presented to me like, well, you'd have to move back. And I said, why would I move back? It's like a 3 times increase in cost of living. And I just moved here. And plus, I'll be traveling all the time. So why would I move back to spend most of my time leaving my empty apartment, right? So that was an easy negotiation. So I did a lot of travel. That did happen, most definitely. I was all over the place. This meant that when I was traveling, I was eating in restaurants or cafeterias at the Intel sites now and then, and those were not bad. When I was home, I was either going out to engage with my locals, right? So around that time, the number one message I would receive from people, text or an occasional phone call, was, "Are you in town? Where are you? Are you in Vegas?" That's back when I would talk to people. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I was eating out a lot. And then when I was here, I was going out and, hanging out downtown and so on. The Downtown Project crowd was okay. It's just, it was a little weird. I think I've talked about that previously. So yeah, I was either going out to engage with them or sleeping, catching up on time zone changes and whatnot, or preparing to depart for yet another trip somewhere. My pretty shortest stop at home was 6 hours. I came home, did some laundry, took a nap, repacked, headed back to the airport. cooking at home is almost a forgotten notion. I mean, you can't cook under those circumstances. Now, being in different countries and trying out the local fare and the other cultures who have set up shop in those other countries was a great experience. One I would repeat immediately. Good times. There is a lot of interesting stuff going on in the culinary world, which is one of the things Anthony Bourdain discovered in his own travels on TV or otherwise. That was one, I mean, he was a character anyway. He tells a good story, and his views on trying new things, trying new foods and whatnot, maybe a little bit more extreme than my own, but it is a good idea. I mean, if you're, if you go to certain restaurants that are trying to attract Western visitors, when I was in China, for example, there was the SeaWorld sort of open air mall, which is basically where I was staying. It's where the Maker Faire was that first year I went. Yeah, they got the Starbucks, they got the KFC, they had a McDonald's, a couple of other. Let me think. I can't think of anything in particular, but a lot of stuff that was Western friendly. But then they also had foods from Turkey and from different. Well, they're on the ocean there, or on the sea, so they had seafood places and whatnot. But yeah, there was nothing like ridiculous. Now, if we went to Fujian, the other part of Shenzhen, they had a little bit more authentic Chinese stuff, so there was a little bit more adventurous. The point is, when you're out traveling and whatnot, don't stick to KFC and Starbucks. Come on, bad idea. So then I got laid off. It turns out they were not interested in having people roaming the world and living in faraway places. They wanted everybody to return back to the Intel home base. So I got laid off from Intel. I took the layoff package rather than move back to Silicon Valley. And so began a swing back toward cooking at home. I actually got a Ninja Foodie. So think the Instapot back in the day. I think I got it on like some free promotion, no interest or whatever. So I'm like, oh, I'll try it. Why not? I use it all the time. It's great. There'd later be a dive into the keto diet, which worked out just fine for me with a lot of home meal preparations and the initial realizations that restaurant food was not so great for this, or often for health in general. Once you start looking at things like, some healthy fats like olive oil, some avocado, some vegetables, and some other. When you start actually looking at the ingredients and why you're eating certain things, you start to think like, oh, restaurants are a lot of potato and bread and soybean oil and canola oil. Interesting. There are entire websites and other content dedicated to what can I eat at a fast food restaurant when I'm on a keto diet. Olive oil is expensive, of course, relatively for a restaurant. For the normal person, it might seem like it's $10 for a good olive oil, and it's $5 for a clear plastic bottle of canola oil, maybe. So go for the canola. If you're cooking on a grill, if you're cooking in a pan, there you go, on a cooktop, then you know the difference at smoke points and whatnot. But olive oil is more healthy than canola by a couple of orders of magnitude, I think. But you're going to get soybean and canola oils and other such things in restaurants because they're just cheaper, better margins. Your standard restaurant is not springing for the better ingredients because margins are super tight. And that I know that. So that's not made up. The keto diet relies. I would blame autocorrect, but it's me. I'm autocorrecting myself somehow. The keto diet relies substantially on good fat sources and low carbohydrate meals. Essentially no carbohydrate, but low, and if there's fiber, et cetera, et cetera. I did a whole episode on that a long time ago. This is essentially the exact opposite of restaurant meals, though. So lower margin is bad. So you're pretty much going with carbs and smaller portions of protein. That's not awful, but you're using these awful fats when the, olive oil is better. Avocados are ridiculously expensive in restaurants. Why? Because they're very fragile and they go bad quickly, or they ripen quickly, and you don't want a brown avocado, et cetera, et cetera. So all these challenges of the restaurant workflow, supply chain, storage, pantry, what's in their pantry for how long, what's in that reach in, et cetera. The restaurant business is very tricky, and I can walk to the store and get one avocado right now. And I can find one that seems reasonably ripe and I can cut it up and I can make whatever I want. So it's a completely different model of production. Then, of course, the pandemic came in March of 2020. Well, it came before that. I think it was at CES 2020, but that's a different story, which meant a lot of eating at home. In fact, almost entirely eating at home. I was already doing this, so grabbing my keto-friendly ingredients from our essential workers fit right into my momentum at the time. Restaurants were probably unfairly vilified in this time frame. But for myself, it was just easier and cheaper and probably healthier to keep up the home cooking. By the way, it was in here that I became a home barista and established my interest in coffee preparation in various ways. It's another win, in my opinion. Now I make my own coffee one or multiple times per day. I actually have been I've been making coffee more like once per day, on average, a little bit higher. But on any given day, I haven't made coffee yet today. I'll make 1 cup of coffee. I really should make the equivalent of a pot of coffee. So like 4 cups, maybe 5 through the whole day. So coffee is actually good for the things that I need it to be good for. So yeah, side note. But it was good. It was a good experience for me, not for the rest of the planet, perhaps, to have everybody locked down, and not bad for the economies and for personal health and all that, mental health, I guess, for some. But learning to prepare coffee in ways that are good for, like, oh, this is really good. I enjoy this. And I can just make it every day for like $1. So the math is obvious. It should be. The word inflation floats around a lot, very easily. People say it like it's, but supply chains, local climates, global climate, and worker shortages, and, well, food supplies can rise in price for different items or for different types of items based on all these and more. Where is this item coming from? What are the circumstances there? How did it get here? All that. Sometimes it is plain old price gouging. So everybody calls everything inflation, but sometimes, the price of bananas is going up. We can raise the price of oranges, stuff like this. So, and I just read an article the other day. Once prices go up, it's really hard for them to go down. Yeah, some sort of gaslighting, perhaps. But whatever the case, whatever the cause, whatever the political campaign claims, whatever the case, cooking at home is already a bit more expensive than it used to be. That's just the nature of the thing. And it's so hard for those inflated prices to go back down, from what I've read. Vegas, like any other place, but more, has its fun economy, trademarked by the UNLV Office of Economic Development, of course, granted in February of 2025. The fun economy powered by those in the service industry and others. Now it's professional sports and gaming and hospitality, all that. It's all one big mass of people that should be replaced by AI, apparently, according to some, which means tipping is a non-trivial element of our economy here. I used to be a normal, even good tipper. In fact, in Ireland, which is where I was most often on behalf of Intel, I was often reminded by the people working in some of the places I would frequent that I was not in Vegas, and they paid their staff a proper wage, and so tipping was not so essential. It's at 10, keep it to €1 or €2. That's it. No more. Eating in restaurants frequently in Vegas could, as far as I'm aware, and has become a real financial planning issue. So it might be elsewhere, probably, but definitely here. And as far as I'm aware, because I really don't frequent them too much, you really got to plan ahead for eating out. And in the post-pandemic era, the tipping options are made much more plain as at points of sale. This is something you'll see in the news from around the country. So that's not only Vegas, but it's certainly in Vegas. You'll see it on receipts. May we suggest a 50% tip? And elsewhere. If you don't want to tip, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. Like resort fees they are not to be ignored. So there's a saying here and elsewhere: if you don't want to tip, don't go out, or similar. If you don't want to go out to eat, don't eat at home, or whatever. The various usually said in anger. And I have to say that it isn't tipping itself that's the problem in my mind, but it's the attitude. Although I do have to say that I think tipping as a component of paying employees is a mistake, and it always has been. You're basically buying services, but that's just tipping is broken. I think it's a bad idea, but whatever, you got to go along to get along. Got to get along to go along. One of those. Uh, uh, but it's the attitude that you must tip me and the overall cost that has reminded me that cooking meals at home is just fine. So if you take an expensive meal and then you have someone expecting or demanding a tip, you're like, I could have cooked all this at home, and I do. And in fact, with some creativity, I tend to make some of my own favorite things for pennies on the restaurant dollar. That's hard to complain. That's hard to compete too. Honestly, eating in a restaurant now is something I can only, well, I cannot readily imagine doing it actually. Sometimes there'll be like, oh, that would be an interesting place to check out, maybe. Coffee shop, maybe. I'm much more inclined to visit a coffee shop, but rarely. But here again, so I make my own nice coffee at home for maybe $1, as I said. So why would I go and spend $6 for the same thing? And in both in restaurant and coffee shop cases, the answer is almost always atmosphere. You're paying for the atmosphere. Okay, but maybe now and then that's okay. But for the most part, don't need it. If I have to meet up with someone, sorry, to for anything, a coffee shop is probably a reasonable destination, maybe. But value proposition. Last section, the kitchen. Now, I have been behind the scenes in the restaurant business just barely enough to get this notion. And on reading Kitchen Confidential, which is not to be taken as gospel truth or even completely literally, I understand that. A few times now I've read it, as read by the author again, which I highly recommend. I am reminded that, to paraphrase, it ain't the restaurant friends, it's the restaurant business, which means that there's always a need to cover costs while keeping customers happy with those ever-tightening margins. So to pay the bills and to keep the place open, corners must be cut. So are fingers and hands sometimes, but the plates must go out. Now, I will accept that the more expensive the spot, the higher the expectations about quality and timeliness. It is likely that the entire kitchen staff and probably the front of the house has sampled the menu and knows what it is what tastes this way or that. It just makes for a better customer experience if the person helping you knows what they're talking about. But let's be honest, as we go down the cost ladder, the employees are less and less likely to have much investment in quality product delivery over timely product delivery. Production by street. And the ingredients are not quite as good to get the margins. And in general, we are paying for the convenience and something that is different and perhaps new, but what are we really getting? Everyone once in a while, think about how much you're paying for that hamburger at McDonald's on their value menu. Like, how do they do? Okay, it's a loss leader, and they are the single largest consumer of ingredients on the planet. I think of all ingredients, they're the number one consumer of onions, for example, etc. Everything. Single consumer. End of the day, cooking for yourself or your family, you are going to be eating this meal. It matters. In restaurants, it may matter. It may not. Health department inspections should always yield nearly perfect scores. Food should be made with good ingredients, and care should be taken, which sometimes takes more time. The restaurant business is a conflicted mess of costs and price and attitudes and cleanliness and rushing and egos and, well, I like my air fryer, my rice cooker, add a microwave, and there is barely a reason to leave home. And that's where I have landed after so many years. I have to say, I think working in a restaurant, but not making it your life's goal. Now, I'm not trying to diminish the people who want to become chefs and who are line cooks and work in a kitchen in a restaurant and people who own restaurants and so on. There's a calling perhaps, or maybe it's just something you enjoy, or maybe it's something you can do. And so you do it. I don't know. But I have worked in the restaurant. So in the restaurant business in various ways, nothing fine, no fine dining. But to me, having worked in restaurants or restaurant situations, fast food, and then just taking a look around every once in a while, and the more you cook at home, the more you realize, like, why would I spend $5, $6, $7 on a coffee when I can make one for $1? I haven't costed it out in a while. It's something like $1, maybe $1.50, somewhere in there with inflation. But why would I do that? Okay, what do I get for that extra $5? Oh, don't forget the tip too. What am I actually getting? Okay, well, I'm getting a table and a chair, and maybe I'm meeting with somebody, and maybe we're going to use their internet connection. Okay, that's maybe once every couple of months at this point. So I can see for a meetup, you're basically renting the table or the space, and you're having people chit chat for a while. They're making some noise. They're displacing other customers. So sure, totally get it. But I just don't see the appeal. That's me. This is totally me. I know some people will totally disagree, but I do not see the appeal of stopping in at McDonald's or whatever. Occasionally, maybe you're going to say, you know what would be good right now is a fish fillet, except that I make those too. So, boy, I could use what's that? The Taco Bell thing, the folded, what's it called? They fold over the quesadilla with the thing inside. What's on the Taco Bell menu? I actually like these, except they're probably awful. Taco Bell menu. Now I just have to know. Sorry, I'm totally. It's a specialty item, and it is I would go get a quick quesadilla at Taco Bell, perhaps. The Crunch Wrap. The Crunch Wrap Supreme to me it's one of those things where like, well, it's probably cheaper for them to just make it real quick, because I don't have to go and make all these ingredients and cut them and do whatever. But yeah, for the most part, and who knows if what's in there is really good. I've heard really horrible horror stories about Taco Bell, and of course, everybody knows what happens soon after you eat a Taco Bell. So, yeah, but right now, where I'm standing right now, when I go to Smith's for my usual grocery stops, and I have a Sprouts, and there's an Albertsons, and a Production by Street. There's a Sprouts and an Albertsons about a mile away, 2 miles round trip walking. So there are grocery options. There's a Target that's a little bit farther away in the other direction. There's Whole Foods if I want to jump on a bus. There's a Walmart if I want to jump on a bus, or I could walk. It's a pretty long walk. But the take home is I have access to ingredients from a variety of places. In those distances, there is a Chipotle. There's a what is it called? There's Chipotle. There's a sushi restaurant. There's a Blaze Pizza. Blaze Pizza is pretty good, but I haven't been there in 2 years, maybe. They sent out promotional coupons to get a free pizza to try, it was a grand opening, and a bunch of people had thrown them away. So I'm like, okay, I'll take these. So I just went there for free a bunch of times. I think I've paid for a pizza there once, maybe. There's a, I can't remember what the name of the place is. There's a couple of fast casual sit down restaurants, but they're, yeah. So, and then there's across the freeway, the Albertsons, there's a McDonald's, there's a Thai restaurant, there's a Taco Bell, no, Del Taco. There's a Dairy Queen, etc. So there's all these places that I could walk for a mile and visit someplace, but I could just go to the grocery store and make these things myself. So save the money and just walk without going to a fast food restaurant. So the mathematics really just doesn't work out for most restaurants. None of the restaurant items are so appealing all the time, right? Again, like the Crunchwrap Supreme, sometimes I'm like, if I was near a Taco Bell, maybe I would consider getting one of those, but then I'm not near a Taco Bell, so I don't. But I could very easily get the ingredients and make it myself if I really wanted to. But then at the same time, I would say, you know what? I could make something similar. Then I don't have to go through all that hassle. And at the end of the day, it'll probably taste better. I will tell you my latest thing that I totally love, I guess, if it's not the right word, but fish, Parmesan fish fillet, whatever, from Gorton's. They're always on sale at Smith's. So I like them. They seem to be reasonable quality. So Gorton's fish, fillet fish, whatever. It's, I can't remember what the fish is, but it's not a bad fish. With Parmesan crusted breading. It's not breading, it's Parmesan cheese. So you throw them in the air fryer for 390 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. I usually throw 3 in there. And then I get 3 tortillas, flour tortillas, just because they're more flexible, really. Flour tortillas, you throw the fish fillet in there and maybe a slice of cheese if I have some cheese around. And I have a variety of different types of sauces. No, not tartar sauce. I put like garlic, teriyaki, so I have some bakan, Japanese barbecue sauces. So those, or maybe some Kinders. They have a couple of different appropriate. Anyway, so that's it. Wrap it up and you're done. Total cost for that meal is maybe $3. And I'm looking at the menu now, a Crunchwrap Supreme is $6.59. So I'm like, I like what I make better. It's easier. So that's the deal. I don't really like to go to restaurants anymore. And that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, thanks for listening. Hopefully this was useful or interesting in some way. If you ever meet me and you say, where should we go to eat? I would say, just go to the grocery store and get something. Anyway, yeah, no, I go out to restaurants very, very rarely. But I think the value proposition is just totally different nowadays. And I'm leaving food trucks out of this completely. I think food trucks are a completely different kind of business. And the owner is usually there. So one of the problems I have with the restaurants is the people that work there often do not care in the slightest. When the owner is the one that you're seeing in the window and they're making the food and whatnot, it's very different. And there's usually a cultural component. They're bringing foods that are not easily available. Maybe it's stuff they grew up with and whatnot. So I just think that's a kind of a different model. Even though it's the same output, they're giving you food and you're giving them money. But I just think I think mobile vending is an interesting business in general. So as I've talked about before, but brick and mortar restaurants, to me, there's got to be a special reason. There's a higher activation energy to get over, and that's where I'm going to leave that. So thanks for listening as always, and take care. And we'll see you next time, or you'll hear from me next time, as the case may be. Bye.